Happy New Year. Welcome to the BamaInsider.com podcast. It's Kyle Henderson with Andrew Bone coming to you from beautiful Tuscaloosa, Alabama. A lot to talk about today on the program, and if you are just joining us, be sure and go to BamaInsider.com and check out Bone's Insider Report. It's packed with information pertaining to this past weekend. As you know, Alabama had the championship celebration parade, and there was some big-time targets in Tuscaloosa. We're going to talk with Andrew about all that, but you can get the whole scoop on BamaInsider.com. And, of course, you can subscribe to any of our podcasts by simply going on to Google or iTunes and searching for the BamaInsider.com podcast. Bone, what's up, man? How you been?
Man, I'm good. A lot has changed since the last time we got together.
Yeah, man. Alabama just reeled in another national championship, right?
Yeah. How we're kind of used to that around here. What'd you think about the whole experience?
I think I like to keep track of everything that's happened to me, and I am so thankful to be in Tuscaloosa and to really, play a small role in, recording the success of Alabama. This has all been brand new to me. So from the start, following the team against Florida State to the end, watching them beat Georgia. I mean, I was down on the sideline for the game, for the overtime thriller, and to watch this team face as much, injuries as they did this year, and to see the resiliency and the focus, and as Saban says, maintaining the right psychological disposition. It all went down this past year, and it's really nice to come to Tuscaloosa and to see the team win a national championship. So for me, it was a tremendous learning experience, and hopefully our subscribers and our readers really, were dialed into our coverage and saw us grow as a business. So it was a great learning experience, and I'm looking forward to year two with BamaInsider.com, and I know Tony learned a lot as well. So you've been through the round, Bone, before, but this was our first rodeo, and it was very fun, to say the least.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I remember back in after Alabama won that national championship in 2009, they had the championship celebration, and Nick Saban was kind of famous for saying, this is not the end, this is the beginning. And a lot of people probably thought, Alabama does have a chance to be a national power once again, but how many more national championships will they win? How long will Nick Saban even be around? That was kind of the question that was going around then. And you look ahead, 9 years later, and 8 years later, however long it's been, and Saban's still been, has remained in Tuscaloosa, has established himself as probably the best college football coach of all time, which is, early on it was almost blasphemy to say with, the history with Bear Bryant, but I think there's a lot of Alabama fans who are now who have accepted that and who have said, Bear Bryant was great. And Alabama was extremely lucky to have him, and someone will probably still say he's the best coach of all time, and Nick Saban will probably still even say the best coach of all time. But to have, in most opinions, the top two best coaches of all time in college football, to lead your football program, and to win, and Saban's won 5 at Alabama now. Bear Bryant won 6. To have both those coaches win 11 national championships for your school, it's unbelievable, and it's quite the ride. I was not alive during the Bear Bryant years, and so many of my family members were, and they experienced it, and so many people that you know through growing up and talking to, there was never going to be anything like it. But I find it really hard to imagine experiencing something like what we've gone through, covering Alabama and just kind of watching it, happen and unfold right in front of our eyes. And especially with the way that recruiting is these days, the scholarship limitations, how good so many football programs are and how competitive it is between all these coaches. And you have so much coaching turnover, whether it's an OC or a DC leaving, or position coaches. You just got so much that goes on, but the one constant in Tuscaloosa is Nick Saban, and he's been able to, early on in his coaching career at Alabama, Alabama was always known for these big physical defenses and the power run game, and he's really evolved, and everyone talks about it now. We all know, but for him to really kind of change the way he approached his defense and the way he approached recruiting certain players at certain positions, and going from we're only going to recruit these 6'4", 250-pound linebackers, or these 6'2", 225-pound safeties, for him to kind of turn that over into getting these fast, quick type guys, in that, especially in that front seven. I mean, you looked at Alabama's defensive line when he first got there, and all these guys were 330-pound guys, and now they're smaller, they're quicker. And, look at Daron Payne. I mean, Daron Payne entered Alabama as a guy that most people thought of an Alabama defensive lineman, a big old 350-pound nose tackle. And by the time he finished his career at Alabama, which was only 3 years later, but he was 310 pounds. And, he was the leader on that defensive front. So it really has been crazy to watch, Alabama have the success that they've had, but also watch and witness them change things on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. I mean, you look at, the quarterback situation, how it went from, guys like Greg McElroy, A.J. McCarron, Jake Coker, to guys like Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa. And, you look at what, the type of players that they're recruiting in the future, and it's it's crazy. And every time Nick Saban is kind of doubted, or the Alabama program is doubted, things may be it looks like he may be heading out, or a new program is going to be taking over. This coach might be better than him. He always seems to come back and win that big game and kind of make people think, wow, he's still around, and it's something that we have to deal with.
We're talking with Andrew Bone on the BamaInsider.com podcast. My name is Kyle Henderson. I'm the managing editor of BamaInsider.com, along with Tony Sakalis, our team writer. Make up BamaInsider.com. You can comp a free 30-day trial to the website at any point. Just look on the front page for the free 30-day trial to access BamaInsider.com. Plenty of high-packed information this week. Bone just dropped his insider report. We should definitely check out. Go to the front page of BamaInsider.com. Bone, as you mentioned, there's been so much turnover, and it seems like it happens year after year with Alabama. I wanted to get your thoughts on Mike Locksley being named the offensive coordinator. I wanted to get your thoughts on Jeremy Pruitt packing up his bags and headed to Tennessee. And I wanted to get your thoughts on Derek Ansley leaving to the Oakland Raiders to be the secondary coach. I mean, those are some guys who have played a pivotal role in the recruiting over the last several years. Do you think it's going to affect the recruiting landscape much for Alabama going forward?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, we've kind of seen coaches come and go for Alabama, and a lot of people have said, "Oh, this is going to end up affecting Alabama in this way." We saw some great recruiters leave Tuscaloosa a few years ago, in Mario Cristobal and Billy Napier and Kirby Smart, and then this 2007 recruiting class, we saw all those freshmen on the field. It was Nick Saban's best recruiting class, so I can't really see things changing now. I think. You look at this recruiting class right now, and Alabama's not where Alabama typically is, which is at the very top, number one recruiting class in the country. Alabama wasn't going to finish number one in the country every single year. I mean, other schools are going to come and have good recruiting classes. Georgia's having a great recruiting class. They're likely going to finish as the top recruiting class in the country. But to think every recruit for the next, 4 or 5 years is going to go to Georgia, they're probably going to be looking at Georgia's recruiting class. Oh, they signed these guys last year. I might as well go somewhere else. And I'm not saying they're going to go to Alabama, but it's hard to keep that up. And Alabama signed, I believe it was 7 5-stars in last year's recruiting class, which was spectacular. And I think that they're going to sign a tremendous class this year. And whether it's, I don't see Alabama being outside of the top 5 based on the guys that they're still recruiting. And you have a top 5 recruiting class, you're in it. you are definitely a major contender for a long time. And you add up those number one recruit. You take the number. Let's say Alabama finishes at worst number 5. They get the number 5 class in. Well, the last 3 recruiting classes were all ranked number 1. So if you put all those classes together, you got a pretty good team. And you also got a great coaching staff along with Nick Saban in Tuscaloosa. So Alabama's going to be pretty okay over the next few years. Now, if we continue to see Alabama, let's say outside the top 3, and other schools continue to be inside the top 3, where like let's say Georgia finishes number 1 or number 2 again, or Ohio State, maybe Clemson, they finish in the top 3 for the next 3 or 4 years in a row. Then you start to, and Alabama's outside the top 5. Then you start questioning, well, Alabama needs to start getting those really good players again. But, with Alabama finishing, I think it's 7 out of the last 8 years as the number 1 recruiting class, I don't think Alabama fans should be concerned or worried at all that someone else may end up number 1 this year, because Alabama's going to be just fine.
So obviously the landscape stays the same, but in terms of the assistant coaches being added on and moved to different positions, which coach, I guess, in the latest acquisitions for Alabama, do you think is going to make an impact recruiting wise now that, as mentioned, Ansley, Pruitt, DeBall have now exited the program?
Well, I think Loxley's a big one. I think that with his recruiting background, as good as he is on the road, he's got such a great connection with these kids, and especially on the offensive side of the ball, he's done such a good job recruiting guys, and I think it's really going to pay off in the end. Alabama's got some key offensive targets who are still out there. A couple who were on campus this past weekend, including Justin Ross, 5-star in-state wide receiver, and having your wide receivers coach promoted to the offensive coordinator, I think that certainly helps a lot. Jeff Banks coming in from Texas A&M. A lot of people know about him. Great recruiter, great coach. I think Alabama's been wanting that enhanced special teams, and they're going to get it with Jeff Banks. And I think you look at some guys from around the country, kickers, punters. Even guys who excel in the return game, they're strongly going to be looking at Alabama.
So this past weekend, Alabama held the national championship parade. It was packed. I was out there, 40,000 plus outside of Bryant-Denny Stadium. Alabama rolled out the red carpet for several high-profile targets. Why don't you give us the backstory and kind of the skinny on who was in town and what they left Tuscaloosa feeling?
Alabama could have easily had a big recruiting weekend last weekend when, a few days after the national championship, and, coaches are still really high on the game, and players are still ecstatic. But Alabama, Nick Saban kind of gave everybody the weekend off, and, Alabama planned a national championship parade for this weekend, or this past weekend, and it was just a perfect timing, because you had a lot of his top remaining targets that were in town, guys that they really want in this recruiting class, especially in the defensive backfield. You had probably two of your top overall guys on the recruiting board, plus on the defensive backboard, who were teammates, Patrick Surtain Jr. and Tyson Campbell, both in Tuscaloosa for the weekend, 5-star defensive backs. And Nick Saban has made it very clear, you have to get defensive backs in this year's recruiting class, because you're losing your top 6 defensive backs from the national championship team. And then in the national championship, you see the guys on the offensive side of the ball who had a ton of success and who helped lead Alabama to a national championship. Tua Tagovailoa, Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Alex Leatherwood. Just an unbelievable group of freshmen. And then next year, Alabama needs some freshmen or newcomers to step up immediately on the defensive side of the ball like these freshmen did on the offensive side of the ball this year. And I think that's what Alabama's selling to guys like Patrick Surtain, guys like Tyson Campbell, among others. And I think Alabama really did a good job of recruiting those guys this weekend, brought them in. Now, we've been hearing some different things regarding Surtain for a while, and this past weekend, I think Alabama has moved ahead for his signature. Now, obviously, it's still a few weeks away until National Signing Day. LSU's still in the mix. Miami's also in there. But if I had to pick a school today for Surtain, I'd say it's Alabama. Tyson Campbell, I think going into the weekend, I think Alabama was probably a distant third. But I think, it's hard to say they've pulled even to either Georgia or Miami, because I think those are the top two schools going into the weekend. But I think Alabama did a good job of selling him on the fact that he and Surtain can be on opposite sides starting, not just playing, but could potentially start next year at the University of Alabama. So I think he really liked that, and I think that I think there's a chance that Alabama could end up with both of those guys in this recruiting class. May shock some people just because a lot of people think that Campbell is going to Georgia. I do think Georgia is in very good shape with him, but at the same time, I think that Alabama has made up a significant amount of ground to consider them a potential threat to Georgia at this time.
Two other prospects Alabama certainly has high on their board: Malik Langham. Right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
And Bobby Brown continues to be a name of topic. Can you talk about those two prospects and kind of paint the picture on where those two stand?
Well, Bobby Brown had basically flipped his commitment from Texas A&M to Alabama in December, and didn't sign, so that can get a little bit of worry for Alabama fans. Leading up until he signs in February, but made the trip back to Tuscaloosa this past weekend with his entire family. Just absolutely had a ball. Just had a great trip. Right now, I think that I would be shocked if he ended up flipping to Texas A&M. I think he's pretty locked in with Alabama. You also mentioned Malik Langham has really kind of blossomed into one of Alabama's top-tier targets over the course of the last couple months. And Alabama really likes him a lot. He named Alabama his favorite after the weekend trip. He's still going to take his visits. He's going to go to Florida this weekend, and then Tennessee the following weekend, and then announce a decision. But I think it's hard to say it's a done deal because you never know what may happen. But I would give the odds of him signing with Alabama at about a 95% chance as of right now. And Alabama's got another in-state target that they really want, who was on campus this past weekend, Justin Ross, the 5-star wide receiver out of Central Phoenix City. We saw him make a little bit of a jump in the Rivals 100 that was released today. I can't remember exactly where he was. I think he was around number 20. Moved up to number 15 after a strong All-Star game performance down in Orlando. Number 15 overall player in the country. Going into this weekend, I kind of had a feeling Clemson had the edge, but Alabama was really kind of surging. Alabama has been, in my opinion, surging for him over the last probably last 2 months. But Clemson was, kind of went into the late period with an edge. But as of right now, if I had to pick, I think Alabama ends up signing him, and that's just the gut feeling on it as of today. These coaches are still going to have in-home visits. He's still taking an official visit to Auburn. I don't think he ends up at Auburn. I think it's Alabama or Clemson. But as of today, I'd probably give the edge to Alabama. I think Alabama ends up getting him, and I'd watch out for Jalen Waddell, also just recently ranked as a 5-star on Rivals.com, out of Houston. Big-time target for Alabama. A lot of people think maybe it's going to be Texas A&M since Jimbo Fisher was there now, and Florida State was an original favorite for him and his family early on. But I think Alabama's still in pretty good shape. Now, we'll see another receiver come into Tuscaloosa this weekend, Jacob Copeland, taking an official visit. We kind of thought Jacob Copeland was a strong Alabama lean early on in the process. after he decommitted from Florida. But right now, it's going to be two of those three guys in Alabama's recruiting class, in my opinion. I think Alabama would be extremely excited about that. As of today, I'd probably give the edge to Ross and Waddell in terms of joining the class, but we'll see what happens with Copeland this weekend. And obviously, some of these other guys are still having some unofficial visits, and Ross is still taking an official visit. And all these guys will meet with these coaches again. They'll meet with their families, and they'll try to make the best decision for their future.
We're talking with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. My name is Kyle Henderson, along with Tony Tsoukalos, who make up BamaInsider.com. You can subscribe to any of our past or future podcasts by simply going on to Google or iTunes and searching for the Bama Insider Podcast. Bone, Quay Walker, and Vernon Jackson, currently on Flip Watch. Can you give us the latest?
Yeah, well, we had a few guys on campus this weekend, and those were some of them. Quay Walker and Vernon Jackson, both Alabama commitments, two linebacker commitments for the Tide. Quay has probably been on, I would say the shakiest ground of those two guys. He lost two of his only two recruiters from Alabama are now gone. Jeremy Pruitt, now at Tennessee as the head coach, and Derek Ansley, now with the Oakland Raiders as the defensive backs coach. Those are really the only guys he had a strong relationship with on the team. Now, Tosh Lapoy has really kind of taken over his recruiting efforts and just has done a marvelous job so far in recruiting him. And I think he went into the weekend thinking, all right, I'm committed to Alabama, but at the same time, I'm probably leaning towards some other schools, Georgia, Tennessee. Those are kind of the schools that a lot of people think he's going to, a lot of people thought after his visit to Tennessee last weekend that he was going to end up in Knoxville. He's still got a visit to Georgia that he's taking this weekend. Georgia's certainly in the mix, but I think he felt a little bit more comfortable with things in Tuscaloosa this past weekend. Spent a lot of time with Alabama linebacker Mack Wilson, who was his official visit host. And, we'll see what happens. I'm not ready to say, hey, he's going to stick with Alabama, but I'm also not ready to say, hey, he's going to flip. Probably a week ago, I was going to tell you he's flipping. He's not going to Alabama. But I think he just had a really good visit to Alabama. He kind of saw exactly, where he would be on the recruiting or on the, depth chart, kind of the numbers. Alabama loves to rotate those linebackers in, and he would have an opportunity to come in and be an impact player, I believe. And, Alabama will still visit with him again and still try to make him feel at home. Now, Vernon Jackson, still taking official visits, Texas, TCU, Texas A&M, came into Tuscaloosa this weekend. Feel a lot more comfortable saying he's going to stick with Alabama than Quay Walker at this time. I think he gave Alabama a very strong indication of where he stands with his recruitment. So I would imagine he's going to end up sticking. Now, another linebacker that was on campus, J.J. Peterson, a long-time Alabama lean. And then all of a sudden, Jeremy Pruitt takes the head coaching job at Tennessee. J.J. Peterson immediately basically eliminated Alabama from contention and committed to Tennessee at the U.S. Army All-American game. Alabama was able to talk him into coming in for an official visit this past weekend. He was in town with his grandparents. Also, his head coach, Rush Probst, who's very familiar with the Alabama program as he was the head coach at Hoover High School for such a long time and is from the state of Alabama. We'll see. And I think it's a situation where Alabama's kind of giving him a lot to think about. Hey, don't make a decision based on where a certain coach is going. Make a decision that's going to help you, make a big impact on your life, and choose the school. Don't choose the coach. And I think Alabama really kind of sold that to him this weekend. We'll see what happens. In my opinion, as of right now, I'd probably say he sticks with Tennessee, but I think Alabama's in the race, and that's all you could really hope for.
As we wind down the show, Alabama, you got to think they take a quarterback from this class. Brock Purdy out of Arizona has emerged as a new name. Also, James Foster, in-state kid from Alabama, was here on campuses last weekend. Can you talk about the quarterback setup?
Absolutely. Well, we saw Alabama extend an offer last week to Brock Purdy. kind of we had talked about that name a while back, maybe back in December, as a kid who had received a preferred walk-on opportunity at Alabama. And I think he was, started to consider it a little bit, but then offers started kind of coming in for him from different programs. And Alabama got back to the drawing board last week after the national championship and tried to figure out, all right, well, we wanted a quarterback in this class. Who are we going to take? And they decided that Brock Purdy was the guy that was still out there that they really liked, and go ahead and extend him a committable scholarship offer. And that's what they did last week. And, I think they decided that he was kind of their guy over James Foster, at least at this point. And they're going to bring him in for an official visit this weekend, kind of, take a look at him. They haven't – Nick Saban hasn't seen him face-to-face. They're going to bring him in for an official visit, kind of understand where his head's at, and just kind of learn more about him off the field. And if all goes according to plan, he'll still have that committable offer, and in my opinion, I think he'll jump on board. Now, James Foster, in-state kid, has always liked Alabama. We've seen him decommit from a few schools throughout his recruiting process. Had committed early to North Carolina, then backed away, then committed to Missouri, then backed away. I think he's kind of waiting to see what happens with the Alabama situation. I think Alabama's told him, hey, you may have an opportunity here. We're still kind of waiting to see. We want to evaluate Brock Purdy off the field, so he's going to come in this weekend, and then we'll kind of make a decision. I think that if Brock Purdy wants to commit, he's going to go ahead and commit, but he's got a few more opportunities that have been presented over the last few days. Some more offers have come in. So he may end up deciding to stick on the West Coast and stay out there. But, we'll see what happens. But those are, Alabama's definitely going to take a quarterback, and it's going to be one of those two guys. And one of the last guys I wanted to mention that I didn't mention earlier is Nick Petit-Frere, five-star offensive tackle out of Tampa, made his official visit to Alabama. A much anticipated trip because he had not visited Alabama since last spring, and Alabama's been trying to get him on campus, and he just doesn't take a lot of visits. He doesn't. It's not like he's been going to, let's say he hadn't been going to Florida or Florida State or Notre Dame on a bunch of trips. He's gone, maybe on one or two trips. This was just his only opportunity to get back to Alabama. Alabama plans on taking one offensive lineman. They have two targets, Nick Petit-Frere, Penei Sewell out of Utah. I think Sewell's going to announce a decision this week. In my opinion, I think he stays a little bit closer to home. I could be wrong. I know his family and some people close to him really like Alabama a lot. So if he chose Alabama, would I be shocked? Not at all. But just from talking to him, from talking to some different people, seems like he's more of a homebody. Maybe he wants to stay a little bit closer to home. So we'll see what happens. But I think Alabama hit a home run with Nick Petit-Frere this weekend. I would put Alabama as the favorite for him right now. That would be a huge gift for the Crimson Tide. So we'll see what happens over the course of the next few weeks. He's got an official visit scheduled for Florida this weekend. Then he's going to Ohio State. Now, he's already visited Notre Dame and Michigan, so he won't be going back to those two schools. But he'll take these two other visits, then make a decision. But as of today, I'd give the edge to Alabama. And so, that would give Alabama one heck of a recruiting finish if you can get some more defensive backs. And we'll see some defensive backs come in town this weekend, some more guys, and we'll see some other visitors between now and signing day. But, Alabama's got a chance to close extremely strong. I think they will.
Good stuff as always, Bone. Nobody does it bigger or better than Andrew Bone, ladies and gentlemen. Jump on over to the Alabama recruiting message board on BamaInsider.com for all the coverage from this past weekend. Be sure and read Andrew Bone's insider report that he just dropped on Monday, January 22nd. We have Tony Sukalis, our team writer, headed down to Mobile, Alabama to cover the Senior Bowl. We got tons of coverage this week from the team side, the recruiting side. Please give us an opportunity for your business. Try the website out free, 30-day trial on BamaInsider.com. Look for the links on the front page. You can email me anytime for customer support, or if you have a question, if you're looking for anything, I'm here to help you. My name is Kyle Henderson. I'm the managing editor, and my email is kyle@BamaInsider.com. From Tuscaloosa, Alabama, this is the BamaInsider.com podcast.